Hello and welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Today, we're diving into a story about following policies in the workplace, particularly regarding the need for an ID badge when dealing with tech devices like laptops. Although the main character, myself, forgot to bring the ID badge, I still worked in an emergency situation without violating any security policies or taking the laptop home. However, the manager, Karen, was adamant about enforcing the ID badge policy, leading to a debate on whether exceptions should be made in urgent situations. Today's story will take you through a surprising turn of events. The ID badge policy became more important than resolving the emergency, and the main character's revenge when he decided to leave, causing Karen to have to borrow his laptop for the professor. If you find this story interesting and full of meaningful lessons, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to learn more valuable lessons. I worked in the university's IT department for over 4 years as a student employee. This job not only helped me earn extra income but also provided invaluable experience in the tech field, from troubleshooting technical issues to assisting faculty and students. Our department is responsible for maintaining the network, computers, and other tech devices across the campus. However, alongside our IT department, there was another closely connected department, the university's Media Center. The Media Center was an essential department, providing various tech devices, including laptops, projectors, and other teaching tools to professors and staff when needed. Whenever a professor requested to borrow equipment for a special lecture or conference, the Media Center was always ready to help. They also handled the process of borrowing these devices and kept track of the equipment. Throughout my first few years, I got to know many of the staff at the university, but by my 4th year, I was familiar with almost everyone, from faculty and administrative staff to managers in other departments. Among them, one person stood out particularly, the head of the Media Center. Let's call her Karen, because, as the name suggests, her personality is unforgettable. Karen held a very powerful position within her department, a strong leader with a strict view on everything. She always stood firm on principles and enforced very stringent rules. Although I didn't always agree with her way of doing things, I couldn't deny that Karen was highly capable and decisive in her work. The rules she put in place were not always comfortable, but they ensured that everything in her department was tightly controlled, with no room for negligence in handling borrowed equipment. Karen was like a queen in her kingdom, where every decision and regulation had to follow her lead. She held a posture of power, and no one in her department dared to go against the principles she set. As a result, everything in her department was carefully monitored, and there was absolutely no room for laxity. One of the policies she particularly emphasized was the ID badge requirement when borrowing equipment, especially laptops. She insisted that everyone, from the staff in her department to the people borrowing the equipment, must strictly adhere to carrying an ID badge and sign a log when checking out or returning devices. According to Karen, this was the only way to ensure the equipment was well managed and not lost or misused. While I understood and fully agreed with the need for strict equipment management under normal circumstances, this was not a typical situation. At this moment, the situation was not under normal conditions. In fact, it was an emergency, where a laptop needed to be borrowed urgently to assist an important professor, but it was having trouble logging into the network. In this case, adhering strictly to the ID badge policy didn't seem like the highest priority. However, Karen was unwavering in her demand for the ID badge before proceeding with the repair. This left me feeling frustrated because, in this urgent situation, I thought that fixing the laptop was far more important than sticking to every minute detail of the policy. On a late Friday afternoon, when the campus was becoming quiet as everyone was preparing to end the week, we received an urgent call from Karen. It was 4:40 p.m., just 20 minutes before our IT department was set to close. We typically closed at 5 p.m., and this was the time when everyone was winding down, ready to wrap up a stressful work week. However, Karen's call was not a typical request. She informed us that a laptop she was trying to lend to an important professor was unable to connect to the network. This wasn't a minor issue but a genuine emergency, as the professor needed the laptop for an upcoming class or perhaps an important conference. She requested that we come immediately to check and resolve the issue, as without it, the professor wouldn't be able to continue his work. Although it was close to closing time and the campus was nearly empty, we couldn't ignore this request. It was our responsibility to assist other departments, especially in such crucial situations. I understood that this issue couldn't be delayed and needed to be solved quickly, so I confirmed with Karen that I would head to the media center to check the problem immediately. Of course, I replied, quickly wrapping up the last tasks on my desk and preparing to leave. Even though the week was coming to an end, I knew my duty was to help and assist when necessary, no matter how little time we had left. After receiving the request from Karen, I quickly gathered my repair tools, double-checked the necessary equipment, and began walking across the campus. The walk took about 10 minutes, but in my mind, I was focused on the laptop I had to check and the network issue that needed solving. Although time was running out and the atmosphere was growing quiet as people prepared to leave, I still felt a slight tension because this issue could potentially affect the important professor's work. Upon arriving at the media center, I entered the room and saw both Karen and the professor waiting. Both of them seemed a bit tense, especially the professor, who was eager to get his laptop fixed and continue his work. Karen appeared slightly frustrated, perhaps because this issue had interrupted her own plans. I greeted them and asked to see the laptop I would need to work on. However, as I was about to approach the laptop, Karen abruptly spoke and said in a rather serious tone, "Wait, Saucer, you need your ID badge." "Where is it?" Karen's words left me feeling confused. In that moment, I realized I had forgotten my name tag. It wasn't an uncommon mistake, as I had been in a rush and simply forgot to grab it, the one I usually wear on my jacket whenever I'm working. Immediately, I imagined where my name tag might be, clipped to my jacket, hanging on a hook in the IT office, ITS. Unfortunately, I hadn't brought it with me to the media center. I knew that for Karen, the name tag policy was very important, and she wouldn't easily overlook it, no matter how urgent the situation. I sighed inwardly, knowing I would have to return to the office, get my name tag, and then proceed with the work. It was an inconvenient situation, but I also understood that rules were rules, and Karen wouldn't let it slide, no matter how I explained myself. I looked at Karen and tried to smile a little, trying to ease the tense situation. "Oh, my name tag is on my jacket, Karen. I forgot to bring it when I rushed over," I explained, managing a wry smile. I felt a bit embarrassed, but that was all I could do in this situation. Karen, still maintaining her usual serious expression, didn't smile in return. She said coldly, without a hint of leniency, "Saucer, you can't proceed without your name tag." At that moment, I felt stuck between two choices: the need to help the professor immediately, and the unbreakable principle of Karen's rules. I tried to explain, "Karen, I think this is an emergency. Do you need me to fix it right now?" Without hesitation, she responded, "Yes, of course," she said firmly, "but we still have to follow the policy." I understood, policy is policy, but at that moment, everything seemed a bit unreasonable. Still, I nodded, trying to stay professional. "Okay. Policy is important," I said. "I'll go get my name tag." Making up my mind, I returned to my office, facing the inconvenient 10-minute walk back just for a small name tag. While I knew I couldn't do anything else, frustration began to build inside me. Once I got to the office, I grabbed my name tag and prepared to head back to the media center to continue the work. But instead of going straight back, I decided to do something else. I picked up the phone and called Karen. "Hi Karen, just wanted to let you know that since it's 5:20 now, and the policy says student employees can't work past hours, I'll have to come back on Monday. Have a great weekend," I said, trying to stay calm but emphasizing that it was already after working hours. Karen was clearly upset, and I could hear the tension in her voice from the other end. She complained for quite a while, not stopping to grumble about the situation. But I stayed calm, not rushing to respond. Eventually, when I felt the call had reached its limit, I almost hung up while she was still fuming. Policy is important, but sometimes enforcing it too strictly in an emergency makes things awkward and ineffective. My boss doesn't like Karen at all. Though he is a calm, easygoing person, it was clear that he disagreed with her way of working. My boss is an amazing person, with a truly inspiring survival story. He's around 50, has beaten cancer, and lives with multiple sclerosis, MS, but that doesn't hold him back. In fact, he still runs security at motorcycle rallies, a job that requires incredible patience and stamina. He's been working at the university for over 30 years and has shown complete dedication to his work. One thing I admire about him is his great vacation policy, 8 weeks every year. The interesting part is that he doesn't just use these days to relax but also for long trips with his wife, exploring different parts of the country. He often takes a few months off to enjoy this time with her, seizing the opportunity to relax and experience new things. This was in 2015, and to me, he was the ideal boss. He wasn't just a great leader but also an inspiration to everyone working with him. He has the ability to maintain fairness and flexibility, not too strict, yet still ensuring work gets done. On Monday morning, when he returned to the office after his long break, he came in with a pile of voicemail messages Karen had left regarding Friday's incident. He couldn't hide his frustration when he saw those messages and shouted at me, "Saucer, you made Karen wait on Friday?" His tone wasn't because I'd done something wrong, but because he couldn't stand Karen's rigidity and lack of flexibility in her work. "Yeah, Chuck, his real name, because he's awesome, I forgot my name tag." "Yeah, you sure do forget a lot." He shrugged, and that was the end of it. Since there was no other option, Karen had to borrow my laptop to give to the professor for the week. It was a somewhat desperate situation, but there was no other choice when the laptop she was trying to use had a problem that couldn't be fixed immediately. To explain further about the issue for the curious, back in the Windows XP days, the system would automatically try to connect to every Wi-Fi network saved in its list. When the user logged in, Windows would go through the list in order, starting with the first saved Wi-Fi network and continuing until it either connected or ran out of networks. The problem arose when this laptop, designed for loan, had hundreds of saved Wi-Fi networks, most of them from hotels, airports, restaurants, and other public places where the laptop had been used previously. So, every time the user tried to log in, the connection process took a long time. In fact, it took around 8 to 9 minutes for the login screen to appear because Windows XP was trying to connect to each Wi-Fi network on the list. This was very inconvenient and completely inappropriate when the laptop needed to be used immediately. With a bit of experience and skill, it only took me about 30 seconds to delete all the saved Wi-Fi connections, speeding up the login process. After doing this, I returned the laptop to Karen and the professor, resolving the issue in a very short amount of time, something Karen couldn't do earlier. However, when I returned to the office on Monday morning to continue work, I noticed that Karen wasn't there. Perhaps she was busy with other tasks or working from another location, but her absence made it feel like the whole incident had ended with no further feedback from her. I fully took responsibility for the mistake of forgetting my name tag. Truly, I didn't intend to violate the name tag policy, it was just an unfortunate oversight. Anyone from the Midwest would understand that the weather here can change unpredictably. In the morning, it could be freezing cold, but by the afternoon, it might warm up enough that you wouldn't need a jacket anymore. And indeed, this had affected me in this situation. When I started working that morning, I had worn my jacket and name tag, following the policy. However, by lunchtime, I felt the weather had warmed up significantly, so I decided to take off my jacket and didn't need the name tag anymore. This was a mistake on my part, as I didn't think this would impact my work later. But Karen, with her strictness, decided that the name tag policy was too important to overlook, even for a small mistake. That was certainly her right, and I respected her firmness, even though I felt it was a bit harsh. But alongside that, I can't help but think about my own rights when I feel that there are other rules that could also be flexible in this situation. For example, the rule that student employees cannot work overtime is one I overlooked when deciding to work at that time, as I really just wanted to resolve the issue for the professor as quickly and efficiently as possible. And after everything was done, the laptop was fixed within 45 minutes of Karen reporting the problem to our office. To me, this was fairly quick, and in terms of efficiency, I think this was a reasonable amount of time to address the issue. Although I know I was wrong for forgetting my name tag, I also think that in some situations, flexibility and the ability to assess the situation correctly could help us achieve better results. But rules are still rules, and sometimes, adhering strictly to them is necessary. Name tags and security policies are really important, and I completely understand if Karen feels uncomfortable letting me handle the laptop without a name tag, as if I were borrowing it from myself as a faculty member using the Media Center's service. However, what I want to emphasize is that I had no intention of abusing authority or working outside the rules. I am an IT employee working late on a Friday, and I really just wanted to help resolve the professor's issue without delaying anyone's work. What I want to clarify is that, although I couldn't complete the work right away so we could both resolve the issue for the professor, I had no intention of taking the laptop home. I was working directly on the laptop right in front of Karen, while she was also in the room. I had no intention of doing anything covert or inappropriate. I understand that my lack of a name tag might have created some ambiguity, but I was just trying to handle the situation as quickly and efficiently as possible. Additionally, it's worth noting that the policy Karen applied is not allowing anyone to handle the laptop without signing for it, but that's a specific policy of the Media Center. Our department, IT, does not have an official name tag policy. This created a difference in approach between departments. We don't require name tags to handle tasks, so when Karen insisted that I need a name tag to work, I felt somewhat confused and that it wasn't reasonable in this context. There are also a lot of assumptions happening in this situation, and I want to clarify a few points. You see, this is 2015, and the purpose of the name tag back then was primarily to record information about the person borrowing the laptop, to manage device lending. But in this case, I wasn't taking the laptop anywhere, I was working on it right in the office, under Karen's observation. So, I think asking me to have a name tag in this situation is a bit too strict, especially since I had no intention of abusing the device or doing anything wrong. Anyway, I understand that each department has its own rules and way of working, and security policies are necessary. However, I still feel that sometimes a little flexibility and the ability to assess the situation can help get the job done more effectively, without being too rigid. In other departments and in most of our work, requesting an ID tag is unnecessary. In fact, there's no part of our work that requires us to sign for devices. We are always allowed to access and handle equipment without going through such cumbersome administrative procedures. Therefore, Karen's request for me to have a name tag and sign for the laptop seemed unreasonable in this context. What's especially unique is that this policy only applies to her department, the Media Center. This is the only department with such strict requirements for device lending. Other departments in the university, including our IT department, do not have such a policy and do not require employees to wear name tags or sign for equipment before handling it. This creates a clear difference in how departments operate and manage their assets. I understand that Karen wants to protect her department's property and ensure that all equipment is properly managed, but in this situation, when I was working right in front of her and had no intention of taking the laptop outside or using it for personal purposes, I felt that requiring a name tag and signing for the laptop was an unnecessarily strict and redundant rule. My feeling was that this was a small oversight that she chose not to overlook, even though I was simply trying to resolve an emergency situation and provide a solution for the professor. The lesson I take from this story is the importance of following policies and regulations in the workplace, but also that sometimes, flexibility and the ability to assess the situation can help solve problems more effectively. While I was wrong for forgetting my name tag, and I fully respect Karen's rule about requiring a name tag to protect her department's assets, there are cases where a bit of flexibility in approach can help get the job done quickly and efficiently without sacrificing accuracy or integrity. The lesson I learned from this incident is, in work, sometimes sticking to the rules is necessary, but knowing when to apply reasonable flexibility, especially in urgent or special situations, is crucial. Overly rigid enforcement of policies can cause unnecessary inconvenience, while empathy and understanding can create a more effective and harmonious work environment. In the future, I will always pay attention to small details like my name tag, but I will also remember that in each situation, the ability to be flexible and assess the circumstances is very important. The advice I want to share is, in work and in life, adhering to regulations is very important, but what's even more important is knowing when to be flexible and understanding of the context. Sometimes, excessive rigidity can hinder progress and create unnecessary situations. Learn to assess situations objectively and flexibly, while respecting the rules. This not only helps you solve problems quickly but also builds better relationships with colleagues and superiors. In every job, understanding and adaptability are key elements that help you grow and create a harmonious and effective work environment. Remember, in many situations, understanding and cooperation can bring better results than strictly applying principles.